Go ahead and call the meeting to order. Greetings and good afternoon. On behalf of the board, it's my pleasure to welcome everyone to the 11th meeting of the ETSU Board of Trustees. When preparing for my remarks today, I began reflecting on how far we've come since our first Board of Trustee meeting on March 24th of 2017. Dr. Nolan does this a lot. Did you know? Did you know that ETSU has awarded 9,367 degrees since our first board meeting? This represents our impact on the region and also quantifies the highest number of degrees awarded over that period of time in ETSU history. This past spring, we graduated more than 50% of students who started in the fall of 2013, the highest graduation rate in the institution's history. This is remarkable given that the graduation rate just 2 years prior was about 41%. ETSU's University School is now ranked the 9th best high school in Tennessee. We have averaged $11 million in externally sponsored research funding each of the past 2 years for a total of $22 million. For the 4th straight year and the 5th time in program history, the ETSU men's athletic program claimed a Southern Conference Commissioner's Cup, which is the all-sport trophy that is presented to the league's best all-around men's athletic program. We're getting feedback here. Can you hear that? As shared during our last board meeting, the institution successfully completed its 5th year interim accreditation process. Furthermore, the Quillen College of Medicine successfully completed its LCME accreditation visit last month. If you're like me, I looked it up. LCME, Liaison Committee Medical Education. Since the Board of Trustees first convened, we have realized the highest foundation fund balance in history, surpassing $100 million. Thank you, Pam. If you had anything to do with that, thank you. In addition to those accomplishments, it was during the first meeting that this Board of Trustees approved ETSU's vision, mission, and values. When each of you arrived today, you found a copy of ETSU's vision, mission, and values statement in your chair. When I look at those guiding principles, I'm proud to know that we continue to be an institution committed to its core values. People come first, are treated with dignity and respect, and are encouraged to achieve their full potential. And relationships are built on honesty, integrity, and trust. Throughout the course of today's meeting, you will hear reports related to efforts underway across the campus, supporting the university's vision of developing a world-class environment to enhance student success and improve the quality of life in our region and beyond. On behalf of the trustees, I'd like to congratulate the staff for their dedication to this vision. As measured by the data in the state's higher education outcomes formula, ETSU has once again outperformed other state institutions, and we have been recognized by THEC as the top performing institution in Tennessee. Give yourselves a round of applause for that. Done that, I trust you'll keep the momentum up into the future. In closing, as we move forward into the last weeks of the fall semester and approach the holiday season, I would like to encourage all of us to continue to reflect on the work of the university and the importance of our mission. We have realized great accomplishments since March 24th of 2017, and I know that we are positioned to continue to enhance student success and improve the quality of life in the region and beyond. I'll now turn to the next item on the agenda and ask Dr. Green to call the roll.
Trustee Ayers.
Here.
Trustee DiCarlo.
Here.
Trustee Foley.
Here.
Trustee Golden.
Here.
Trustee Grisham.
Here.
Trustee Latimer.
Here.
Trustee Ramsey.
Here.
Trustee Santana.
Here.
Trustee Wolf.
Yes, sir.
And Chairman Niswonger.
Here. Next on the agenda will be the approval of the minutes of September the 20th, 2019. They're behind tab 1 in the board book. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
Also motion.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor, please say aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. Next is the report from the Finance Administration Committee. Steve DiCarlo.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to thank Dr. King and her staff, who obviously make us look good every time we dive deep into the details. We had a riveting discussion about the difference between GASB and FASB accounting, and we'd like to take you through that this morning. The Finance and Administrative Committee met this morning to review several items. One, the committee received a report on the unaudited financial statements. The actual audit is nearing completion, and the exit conference will be scheduled soon. Reports will be mailed directly to trustees after completion of the edit process in the Tennessee Comptroller's Office. The committee reviewed the university's Composite Financial Index, CPI, report, and the ratios demonstrate the continued financial health and stability of the university. Just to go off script here a little bit, it is an interesting ratio. It's not easily explained, and I'm not going to attempt to explain it. But back in, we were judged, and the way it was referred to as 2.07. Well, we've improved to 3.29. To give you perspective on that is tough. But if you really think about it, it's up 50% in that 4-year period. And that is a big swing from where we were in 15. So to the point that Chairman Niswonger made, we are doing a great job, and it shows up in the things like the CPI. Is that okay? I went off script? Okay. The committee received a report on the federal fund receipts and scenarios of reduction in funding prepared for the Tennessee Department of Finance and Administration. I'm thankful that hopefully that'll never be executed on, but we did prepare the report. The committee reviewed the quarterly report of contracts and agreements over $250,000. And lastly, one of the items, the Finance and Administrative Agenda item number 9, was referred to the Audit Committee for a subsequent meeting, and therefore was not taken up in this meeting by the Finance and Administrative Committee. So with that, the committee also approved the October 2019 budget revisions, which Dr. King will now present to the board for approval.
Good afternoon. It's great to be here. Thank you. Appreciate that. We'll walk through some. As you all are aware, we have 3 budgets that we prepare each year, 1 in the fall and 2 in the spring. The spring budgets are the end of the year budget and then the beginning of the following year budget. You approved those back in our June meeting. And now we're here with the October revisions that catch us up for what our enrollment is and allow us to bring some carry forward funds into the budget for expenditure. So I wanted to go over the main campus budget. It's the largest budget for the university. And tuition and fees were adjusted because our enrollment was down a little bit more than we had planned in our budget, but that was offset in a large part by some revenue generated through course fees. We received an additional appropriation from the state of Tennessee that came in after we prepared the budget for July, and that was $1.5 million for the Center for Rural Health Research. So that and a few other dollars added in there are the additional funding for state appropriation. Of that, $1.5 million for Rural Health Center for Research, $750,000 of that is recurring, and $750,000 of that is one-time startup funds. We adjusted grants and contracts revenues down slightly because we based it on what our year-end numbers were for FY19. Sales and services and other revenues have been increased by almost $500,000 due to a good performance in our investment income area. And we had a little bit of a decrease in housing this fall, so we took that budget down just a little bit. But our total revenue budget adjustments are about $2 million increase. So where we put the investment of these funds, I have to stop here and explain, as I do every year at this point in time, that when we get to the October budget, it's a little bit funny looking because at July, our revenues pretty much balance to our expenditures. That's the revenue we're going to take in and the expenditures we're going to make. When we get to October, we had money that was left in our fund balance for particular purposes, mostly fee-generated money from students. That could be course fees, technology access fee, program service fee, debt service fees, those kind of activities. And we carry those funds into our October expenditure budget so that it allows units to use the resources that are available. So when you look at it in your book, you'll see it appears that we wrote revenue up just a little bit, and then we wrote expenditures up like a whole lot. But that is because we're putting the carry forward funds into the expenditure budget so that they can be utilized by units on campus. So the primary recipient of the student fee carry forward funds is our instruction area. So almost $8 million in course fees were carried forward, and we also had the increase in fees that makes this $8 million adjustment into our instruction expenditure budget. Again, the Center for Rural Health, it's in our research program, and with that, we increased the expenditure budget by $1.5 million for that function, and we also brought in some research improvement money from the prior year that moved forward. The College of Nursing is making an additional investment in their public service area. This is really a budget difference within their own unit. So they just moved some money from instruction down to public service. Academic support. We've talked about the implementation of the budget model, which allows units to carry forward some funds at year end. So they're allowed to carry forward 50% of their unspent budgets. And that incentivizes them to be good stewards. So much so that in the academic support area, we're carrying forward almost $3 million in unspent funds from the prior year. And that allows the colleges in particular on this line item to invest in new programs, invest in faculty, and invest in facilities for academic programs. The student services area has a slight decline where we're reclassifying some scholarships down to the scholarship line. Institutional support, again, is a beneficiary of the new budget model with vice presidents and other administrative units being able to carry forward funds to invest in the current year. Operation of plant was adjusted upwards for some carry forward fees and also some changes in pro rata charges to units. And we made an increase in our scholarship and fellowship line of a little over $1 million, where we moved the athletic scholarships down to that line and also added some additional scholarship monies this year in the budget. So those two slides lead into the summary, which you have in your notebook, where our revenue is increasing by almost $2 million, and we're increasing the expenditure and transfer budgets by approximately $18 million. And as I said, that big difference there, those are carry forward funds from the prior year. So that's the main campus budget. Won't go into as much detail on the other appropriation units that we have. They're all specialized units, starting with the College of Medicine budget. You'll notice that we've got a slight increase in revenue, but we have some negatives in the expenditure lines, and that really is coming from where we're reclassifying some expenditures between categories to get our benefit program for retirees in the right categories. This is a program that we had to implement financially last year, and we're still adjusting budgets for what we call OPEB, other post-employment benefit for our retirees. So the total adjustment for College of Medicine is a little over $300,000 for revenue and an increase of almost $3 million in expenditures. If we move to family medicine, not much of a shift here. They increased revenue slightly. They have an increase in the instruction program, and that is where they're bringing on some new faculty, so that's salaries and benefits for a couple new faculty positions. And those are actually being funded somewhat by transfer from their R&R funds. So the net difference in expenditure and transfer budgets for them is around $200,000. The College of Pharmacy is impacted with salary increases and carry forward money. So salaries and benefit increases are the reason for the increases in all their lines, plus the carry forward fees for the year. And they had no adjustment to revenue, just about a $1.7 million adjustment to their expenditure categories. So that is the revisions for October for the finance side of the equation. We also have to report our personnel changes. And you'll see I've just put this in two categories, so the main campus, and then I put medicine, pharmacy, and family med all together in the non-formula units. We're increasing faculty positions by 12. 4 of those are for the Center of Rural Health. 4 of those are for nursing undergraduate programs. 3 of those are in the College of Education. And then we have 6 positions in professional support on the main campus, and those are going to the Center for Rural Health, and also for staff for the Fine Arts Center that will be opening this fiscal year. For the non-formula units, we have an increase in 2 faculty for the College of Medicine and a decrease in 1 maintenance tech support person. So for a total of an increase of 1. So 17 position increase for the university as a whole in this budget cycle. Do you all have any questions for me?
Questions? Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you very much.
Since this recommendation has been received by action of the Finance Administration Committee, A motion to approve is not necessary. With no further questions, I will call for a vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Next is our report for Dr. Linda Lattimore, our Chairman of Academic Research and Student Success.
We had a really good morning this morning. We started off including Mr. Scott Carter presenting some Title IX athletic updates and how we are trying to equalize and increase women in the sports section. It was suggested that perhaps we start with acrobatics and tumbling, and they explained to us how they came to that conclusion. There was a lot of discussion if that was the best route to go. We were going to continue to perhaps have a little more information submitted to us. We next had a presentation. I sound like I'm like, okay. Dr. McGee gave a presentation on our ETSU School of Graduate Studies. It's amazing how many wonderful different graduate programs we have, and it seems like we have difficulty getting out to the region marketing of all of these great opportunities. So we explored the best ways that we could perhaps do a better job there because we have so many wonderful programs. We had an update on the LCME site visit, as was explained earlier, which is the accreditation body for our College of Medicine. Dr. Block and Dr. Olive and the entire faculty of the College of Medicine did an outstanding job. We don't have our final exit report. I believe that letter will be in February, but we vastly improved and they should be commended. We had, in our research segment of our discussion, we had an update on the College of Medicine research activities by Drs. Block and we were going to discuss some scorecard opportunities that I think are going to be presented later today. And then we had Dr. Linville give us an update discussion on the Ballad MOU, a Memorandum of Understanding, between ETSU and the Ballad Coordinating Council. We had some discussion that we would like that to be in a standing agenda item so that we know if we're able to move the needle on all of these wonderful commitments that both ETSU and Ballad has made to the region. So we're looking forward to hearing more about that in the future. And then we had an action item, which is the out-of-cycle tenure actions, and Dr. Bishop is going to present that.
Good afternoon. It's always nice to bring before you qualified faculty who are joining our university. We have two to present today. Dr. Deborah Dumfrey, who is a doctorate of nursing practice. She graduated from Duke University and she joined the College of Nursing in May of this year. Dr. Dumfrey she was a tenured faculty member at the University of North Georgia. She comes to us with significant research, publication, and practice background. And she was going to be here today. I don't believe she is because she got called away and had to be at a clinic. So she isn't able to be with you today, but we're delighted that she's part of our faculty. The second faculty member that we're bringing before you today is Dr. Trina Paulus. Dr. Paulus' specialty is qualitative research. She's received her PhD from Indiana University. She's a senior faculty member. She's been tenured at both the University of Tennessee and at the University of Georgia. And she comes to us from the University of Georgia, and she's joining our Department of Family Medicine, specifically their research section. Her qualitative research is particularly important for the training of our residents and our students, and she's very much involved in our interprofessional education program. We're delighted to present these two faculty to the Board of Trustees today for tenure.
Okay, thank you. Since this recommendation has been received by action of the Academic Research and Student Success Committee, a motion to approve is not necessary. With no further questions, I will ask for a vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those like sign. Thank you. Also, this morning, the Audit Committee met. As chair of the committee, Mr. Golden, will you present comments related to today's business?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As usual, we had a great time in Audit Committee. It continues to be the funnest committee on the ETSU board. I encourage all other committee members, if you have nothing else going on at 8:30, feel free to stop by. We made slight revisions to the fiscal year 1920 audit plan to accommodate some things that had come in the door that needed to be worked on. Reviewed 5 audits that had been worked and submitted, including golf, executive level audit. There's always a random vice president picked. Usually it's a different one every year. And so there was an audit there. President's expenses volleyball, and a look at the completed audit heat map. All audits were clean. It's a testament to the internal controls existent at the university, as well as tone at the top, to ensure that there is a healthy respect for controls. We always review the recommendation log status. This is where management has agreed to perform certain remediation steps by certain dates. Green and blue are the good. Everything was green and blue. Again, a very good reflection on administration and staff to ensure that. With no other business, we went into executive session and looked through the yearly enterprise risk management exercise. Those risks will come to appropriate committees in upcoming committee meetings. And with that, we adjourn. That's our report.
Thank you. Item 8 is our consent agenda. As noted in your materials found behind tab 4 of your agenda packet, several items have been reviewed by our board committees this morning. Are there any items on the consent agenda that members would like to pull for consideration by the full board?
Mr. Chairman, as I mentioned earlier, item D, we're going to refer that to the audit committee.
All right, thank you. Noting Trustee DeCarlo's request, do I have a motion for adoption of the consent? Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 9, nursing state credential pathway update. This time I'd like to ask our Dean of the School of Nursing, Dr. Wendy Nearing, to present a presentation on the innovative work occurring there.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Dr. Nolan, trustees. It's with pleasure that I present to you our accelerated LPN to BSN program. All credit for this program belongs to these 3 ladies. Dr. Webb, who's our Associate Dean for Undergraduate Programs, Ms. Quillen, who is the Director of the Post-Licensure Programs and the Undergraduate Programs, and Ms. Casey Haldren, who is the LPN to BSN Coordinator. Let me tell you a little bit about how this program came about. A few summers ago, Dr. Webb and Ms. Quillen asked if they could tour the state because we wanted to promote our RN to BSN program. But they felt it would be worthwhile to stop at the TCATS along the way to see what they felt about the RN to BSN program and helping the LPN students to move forward. And they said they would really like an LPN to BSN program, and one that is accessible and one that they can get through as quickly as possible. They heard this over and over again. So when they came back, they said to me, we've got to develop this program. So they worked to develop this hybrid accelerated program with 23 hours of articulation credit based on the LPN program that's already in existence. And in Tennessee, that program is standardized across the state. So we know that all the programs they go through are going to be the same, and so therefore articulated credit will be the same for everyone. And they were able to compress this into 4 semesters. And at that time, Ms. Haldren was in charge of the Elizabethton TCAT LPN program. She's now with us, as you saw in the picture before. So those ladies worked with THEC to obtain site codes, and we are the only public university in Tennessee to offer an LPN to BSN program. As soon as we posted the ability to have applications, we had students apply. We wanted to have 60 students per semester. We had 59 students who enrolled the very first semester. Let me show you a little bit about how this program has grown. So for that first semester last fall in 2018, we opened with 3 sites, and as I said, 59 students. So you can see that we were in central and eastern Tennessee. Erlanger called us that fall and said, we want to come on board. We would like to offer this opportunity to our employees so that they can improve themselves. And if area LPNs that don't work for us would like to be part of this, we will have them come here too. Because not only will we support our own employees in this program, we will offer clinical locations in our system, and we will help provide the clinical instructors. That was all at no cost to us. Then, in the summer, we added Shelbyville. This fall, we picked up Sevierville and New Bern. We had planned for this spring Vanderbilt Health System because they said they'd like to come on board, but they have yet to finish signing off all the documents, so we are moving that to summer, but Pulaski will start. Since I did this slide, there's one more TCATS interested, so we have 5 additional sites planned across the state. So you can see how this program has grown. This summer, these ladies told me that they had had 1,000 inquiries per week. And our advisors say the calls that come in the afternoon are all for this program. And now I have been beginning to get emails asking when you can come to our area. We've had inquiries as far away as South Korea. This fall, we had 94 students enrolled in the program, which is just short of what we normally enroll in our traditional program on the main campus. For the spring, if all the students that we've accepted their applications, we should have 102 students start in the spring. We currently have 261, and the areas where we have the most interest, if you can, is from the Crossville area and Nashville. That's where we have that. And I want to tell a little story here that happened about a month or so ago. As I said, they've traveled the state, and they've done that each summer. So last summer they went again. So they've gone to the different TCATS, and in some instances they say, you know, it's a great idea, but no, thank you, we're not interested. So in one of the Memphis area TCATS, after the administration said that, the students were so upset that they got a petition of 500 signatures that they took to the president and said, we want this program. Because we offer the program at the TCAT sites, which is close to these students' homes. So we provide THEC with a summary of the outcomes each semester. And overall, the state is experiencing a nursing shortage, especially in the rural areas. And there are need for nurses, and they will certainly say that in our area here through Ballot Health. So this is one way where ETSU is working with our area agencies. One of the things we've seen is not only an increase in numbers in the LPN programs across the state, but the community colleges have seen increases in the number of students who want gen ed courses so that they can qualify for this program. So this is a case where ETSU is really meeting a workforce need. Any questions?
Great work. Dr. Nolan
you.
reminded me that when we first cranked that first board meeting, that one of the things we were looking for was to be a little bit more nimble, speed from idea to implementation. I think you've been very, very successful with this one.
Thank you.
It's great for our university and the state. Thank you.
Thank you.
I want to put something in context for the board because Dr. Nearing was very humble in her presentation. As she noted in the final slide, her staff began a statewide tour in the summer of 2017. We're now in the fall of 2019, and you see the statewide expansion. It's rare that the Tennessee Higher Education Commission comes to campus to visit and learn, but they came to campus in August because they wanted to see how we were able to do this. For those of you who work in student space, you're familiar with the challenges of transfer. You're familiar with transfer pathways. And you know that it's very difficult for students who take courses at the TCAT, which is in clock hours, to have those clock hours transcribed to credit hours and to have all that upwardly transfer. They found a way to do this, and they're now the preferred provider. So we are the only public institution providing the service. We are the preferred provider for the state. And I think the market potential here in many respects is unlimited. It's a hybrid model. You have instruction on campus at the TCAT. We've worked together with the TCATS to bridge SACS-related issues. And I want to go back to close on the chair's point. One of the things that the board has asked is for us to be a little bit more nimble and respond to business and industry needs. There's no larger business and industry need at this point in some of the healthcare settings than the need for nursing, and we're the institution that's delivered. And I can't say enough to applaud the faculty of the College of Nursing.
Dr. Nolan, I just want to echo that. Because we tried this in West Tennessee with the public university, our program. We have a lot of students that go through the AIRS program. So I want to do a special thank you to your Dean of the College of Nursing, because it takes somebody that has a willingness not to say, why can't we, but to say, how can we? And to make sure that you implement it with a robust, you stick to the academics, so you have strong nurses. When we tried this before, we got all the reasons why this wasn't a good path. And to see it done with such fidelity and to see it grow, we knew there was a need. But to your point, we have asked you to be nimble. I think this is a perfect example of somebody that said, we're going to do it right, but we are going to meet a need. And I have the exact opposite example of where it did not work. So I just want to say an extra special thank you for somebody that actually took a program and said, we're going to make this work for the community. That's what we're looking for.
Not to pile on.
Keep piling on.
Yeah. Well, you've now set the standard for the campus.
Yes.
So all other new programs, right?
Yeah.
This
About
is the
18
bar to
months,
beat.
yeah.
It was, if I counted, your first cohort was fall of 18. The listening tour was in 17. So that's a year, right? Yeah. I mean, that's awesome. You set a new bar. That's great.
Item 10, strategic plan progress update. I'd ask Dr. Mike Hoff and our Chief Planning Officer to come forward. Please present.
No one told me I was going to have to follow that. I'm not a numbers guy, but that seemed like a big deal. I do want to share with you the progress about where we are. What we're going to talk about a little bit is how we did in the outcomes-based funding formula as we compare that to all of the universities and the LGIs. We're going to talk about the KPI updates and also some selected strategic initiatives. I'm going to walk a fine line between giving you too much detail that would steal some thunder from the president later, and also allowing you to see how we relate these KPIs. I want you to think about leading versus trailing indicators. That's a big deal in KPIs. That's why you don't look at every number. You look at one that indicates if you're on the right path and one if you got there. Basically, this allows you to see if we're as great as we say we are. When it comes to the funding formula, and I know this is small, what I really want to highlight for you is that 2 years in a row, ETSU has pretty much exceeded the bar in comparison to other institutions in the state. A little bit of that is math. So I said before I wasn't a numbers guy, and I'm really not, but I had hired one at one point who ran some numbers, and we made sure to set our weights appropriately. And that's been one aspect of the performance. The other aspect is the focus on completion. If you look at this, students accumulating 90 hours, bachelor's degrees, master's degrees, those things in the 6-year graduation rate, those are big deals because those meet the Drive to 55 goals that were set by the state. That's not easy to do. There are some warnings though, and that is that last year I gave a little bit of a warning that we were down at the 30-hour threshold. Now we're down at the 30 and the 60. The good news is we're not down as much as everybody else all the time. And there is something that I would like to point out because research, service, and sponsored programs is a big topic for us, as it should be. I just want to point out that our growth rate has exceeded all universities, which includes some of those that call themselves research universities down the road, as well as the LGIs. So we are trying, and I think that you'll see that we've made some progress. You all have this dashboard. It was a part of the board packets. I won't go into the detail on this. But these are the things that I and other members of the ETSU community and you should look at to know whether or not the areas or the pillars of the strategic plan that we've set and whether or not we're making progress. I do want to reiterate one thing. This is a balanced scorecard, and that's a topic that gets thrown around a lot. If you go and search for KPIs, they'll talk about balanced scorecards and things like this. When I talk about it, I mean that we didn't just pick things that we could make all blue and yellow. We picked some things that were red, but they matter. And I think you saw a budget presentation. There was a relatively low dollar figure in the change for tuition, and a lot of that was based on fees that we had added this year. enrollment matters, and it matters not just because of the drive to 55 or other things. It matters because undergraduate enrollment, in large part, is how we pay a lot of the bills. It's where you get money to have some graduate student stipends that teach some of those general education courses. This is a complex puzzle, and right now we're a little bit red in one of the areas where we'd like to see it go blue real quick, right, Joe? And Sharon and a few other people that are here from the professional schools. I want to talk to you about applications. So you'll notice that this is the one chart, the freshman applications is the one chart where I've made the line blue, but it doesn't cross the threshold by 2026. There's a reason for that, and it's because, I don't know, we're like 1,000% ahead in applications right now. We made significant changes in structure as well as in policy and process over the past 12 months related to enrollment. As we implemented those, we've seen a very positive response from applications. Now, if somebody were a pessimist, like myself, they would tell you that maybe those are just early applications that we would have gotten anyway. Or maybe they would say that those were because we waived the application fee. But if you were an optimist like myself, you would say it doesn't matter because we have an opportunity to convert all of those students into enrollment, and we have 2 more months than we had with them last year. And that's the key. We have 2 more months. Even if these were going to be later applications, what we've done is create a different funnel. And so I went ahead and marked that blue because you guys have done a great job. First year average ACT is on track to hit that target early. The reason this is important is because as we drive applications up, we can't just do it with students who don't have other opportunities elsewhere. You have to have a balanced class. ETSU is caught in between the need to be a service and access institution to this region, but also to provide the kind of robust faculty and research profile that can meet some of the other service needs of the region. And that's why that ACT score is critical. Now we get into some of the red numbers. Don't worry, it's like a roller coaster. We're going to end on a positive note, trust me. The first-time freshman is down. This is true across the state. I know that looks like a little bit of a decrease and the trend line is negative. First-time transfers, the trend line is positive. One of the things that we've noticed in the fluctuation with Tennessee Promises is moved some freshmen to transfers, and it's also, I think, although we don't have all the data yet, but we'll see about that later. I think one thing that's happening is some people who used to start at ETSU and go to the 2-year school are now starting at the 2-year school and coming here. So it's going to take 4 or 5 years for a lot of this mix to work out, but the reason these indicators are so important is because 4 years of education at ETSU, that's really what we care about. We care about that start at ETSU, finish at ETSU, and that's true for the 2 years for the transfers. The overall enrollment is roughly flat. And if you look at this, I know there's a lot of talk about, there's a lot of promises being made. I'll just say that. And although free tuition sounds good, I've told this story a couple times, and I think you'll get it. I went to Earth Fair the other day, and they had a pizza out on the tray. It was a perfectly normal day. It wasn't too hot, not too cold. And the pizza was 2 slices of every kind of pizza they offer, and a sign on it said free. I sat in there and ate my lunch, and at least 30 people walked by that pizza. Not one of them took it. Not everything that's free has value. And I would like to point out that what we focused on is what's the value that we can provide. And we're building the foundation for that. And that's going to matter a lot. I can also tell you that there's about 1,000 students here that would be eligible for some of those promises. They didn't pay any tuition at ETSU. We have need-based aid. We have merit-based aid. We don't package our aid correctly, and we'll take a look at that. When we look at location, because we are a border institution, it's very important that we maintain a robust enrollment outside the state of Tennessee. I can't stress that enough. What we do matters for the community in Central Appalachia, and that means we need enrollment to be high. And we're on track to hit the target of 2,500 people. International enrollment, that's not an error. It literally falls off the chart. And that's a problem for us. That's a problem at the graduate level. That's a problem at multiple levels. International enrollment is not only a good way to connect our mission with the global environment, but it's also a good way to expose our students to things they wouldn't normally see. You know, one of the things that people don't talk about enough, but wars are terrible. World wars are some of the worst. But it also gave people that were 18 to 25 a reason to travel around the world and see things they never would have seen. And if you talk to people who did that, including my relatives and others, they always talk about what they learned when they did that. International association and international travel is a big deal. And it's also one of the, study abroad is one of the hallmarks of high-impact practices. And so I think we've really got to talk more about how it is we can get that number to go a different direction. Graduate enrollment, again, doesn't quite meet the number. They went down a little bit this past year, but I think, as Dr. McGee would tell you, international had an impact on that. The other thing that happened is Dr. McGee was new. We'd undergone a review, and we'd had 5 straight quarters of growth. If you listen to the news right now, what's the number one reason why we're about to have a recession? Because we haven't had one yet. After an extended period of growth, people look for things to go down. And I think this next year we'll see it go up. Applications are in a good place, and I think we've responded well programmatically. Oh, and overall enrollment, which includes the professional schools, has been roughly flat. We've got to find a way to get moving. And I'm going to stress this, and I hope everybody else does. I hear a lot that people are like, I don't know where 18,000 came from. And that's fair. I don't think we've done a good enough job of telling people, but 18,000 students is what's required of ETSU at a 60% graduation rate and an 85% retention rate to meet the goal of Drive to 55 for this area. That's what we have to get to. That's what the state told us they expected of us, and that's how we were able to set that goal. There are some other reasons for it, like it'd just be great if more people came to ETSU, and so 18,000 sounds good, but I could have said 20 or 25. Maybe we'll get there too. Student success. I know the retention rate looks a little funny here. What's really important to understand about the retention rate is if this would have been 10 years ago, I would have been showing you that the retention rate was hovering around 67%. So in 2014, we took some action, hired some advisors, did some other things, and we saw the retention rate get to this new plateau. I play golf, and my first goal when I was a high school golfer was to get to where I could shoot bogey golf. And then for like the next 10 years, I shot bogey golf until one day I didn't, and then I was at a new place. And I think the big thing here is that we've got some advising and other initiatives that are going to have a big impact on this and get us up another 5 or 6 points. The graduation rate's obviously going gangbusters, which isn't helping enrollment, because even though these people graduate, and that's great, they aren't staying and paying tuition for another year. And we're ready to exceed that goal. I also want to point out that when we set the graduation goal, and if you look at other KPIs for other institutions, sometimes they'll obfuscate that goal, and they won't set it as high for special populations or underrepresented groups. At ETSU, we said 60% is 60%. We expect all the populations to graduate at that rate. We've seen significant progress in the male population, which is not easy to do, and also in the non-white, it looks like we're going to meet that goal. And that's a big deal. That's a really big deal given some of the news that we've had over the past couple of years relative to how it is we've handled that. Now we're going to talk about extramural funding. And I'll go ahead and let Trustee Latimer know this won't have everything you want to see, but we're working toward it. So I think the big thing is the top chart. The top chart is the amount of money we requested. And when you look at this, we requested an additional $100 million. Now that isn't just that somebody can write down on a piece of paper, I want 50 instead of 5. That means somebody has to back that up. Somebody has to do research. Somebody has to understand the field. A team of researchers have to go together on a consortium. This is not a small thing to do, to ask for another $100 million and do so without your nose growing a little bit. And so I think when I talk about a leading indicator, this is a leading indicator. We're asking for more money. The first thing you have to do is ask. The next thing you have to do is demonstrate the competence to use it. The second one is that extramural funding is the goal that's set by the institution. And it's because it's some of the goals that are set by the state and some other things in the way that we're measured on a federal landscape. We are set to meet that goal. The goal that we set in the strategic plan is the goal that we're set to meet. We do that through service activities and other things. And we can talk more about the research next. So there's 2 things on this slide. Overall, the way that I think about a set of key performance indicators for an institution like ETSU around research, I think first about what are we asking for. I think second about what are we getting. And then I think about what's our mix. How much does it cost me to get that dollar, right? And that's what these 2 show you. They show you that it's roughly an even swap. Now, the College of Medicine will tell you they're spending a little bit more money to get $1, and there's some other activities that balance this out. There are 2 other things that I think are really important that I don't have a good handle on right now. So the first one is publications, and we've collected the faculty activity reports. I don't have a chart to show you, but that'll be next. And then the second thing is a matrix to look at what share of this money is split up among research at the federal level, public service at the industry level, this kind of matrix. And I feel like I have a good handle on all that data yet, but we'll have that for the next meeting. The one thing that I did notice right away, though, in talking about how competitive this money is and why those proposals are such a big deal, is 76% of the money that we requested was research dollars at the federal level. Of the money we received, only 16% was research at the federal level. It takes a lot of work and a lot of effort to ask for that much money, to only have it be 16% of the money that supports it. And so being able to talk about that, though, and highlight those numbers is where we're headed. The other thing is the HERD data was just released. I mean, we just got the numbers. So the presentation that we made at a prior meeting that detailed out some of the particular types of research, we'll do that. We'll update that with the HERD data, too. Now, I want to talk to you a little bit about student success. Recruitment and enrollment has been a big deal. And part of the reason that that's true is because when you talk about branding or you talk about marketing or you talk about these other things, recruitment and enrollment are a big part of that. How we brand the institution, how we market the institution. Who's probably the best marketing team that we have? All the people that work here, all the people that went here, all the teachers who we graduated. And I remember I asked the College of Education one time during a strategic planning meeting, I said, you all graduated, all these teachers and principals. How many of them would say something nice about ETSU? What was their experience while they were here? Well, you got to think that was 4, 6, 8, 10, 12 years ago. And that's why I think the work that we're doing in student life and enrollment around recruitment and enrollment is a big deal because those students' experiences will start to yield better outcomes. We had a consultant come in for advising, and we're going to implement those recommendations. I know that the president will talk a little bit about that. I'm responsible for finishing up the RFP around tuition, price, and discount. We spent a lot of time this semester learning how it is people go about telling institutions what the best price and what the best discount is. The reason that's important is if you look at just a private school model, you end up in a situation where you charge $50,000 on a sticker price and you discount 40 of it. That's not a good strategy. And so what we did was try to identify the right people who could tell us how to price ourselves regionally, in-state, and out-of-state. And also, our discount rate's just unsustainable. I mean, you saw it from the numbers that Dr. King presented in the budget. Equity and inclusion, some of the staffing changes that we've already made there. And one of the things that I really want to point out, and this is a theme for ETSU as a whole around the strategic plan, equity and inclusion has moved from compliance to people. And that is not an easy thing to do, because there are still rules around compliance, and we'll make sure those happen too. The operational alignment is the last thing that I want to touch on. And I hope that you look at each of the 5 of these bullet points as the things that are going to take up a lot of our time as an institution. It sounds easy to say operational alignment. We're going to align the operations to the strategic plan and to the institution we expect to have in 2036. That sounds great. But as Dr. Bishop will tell you, when you sit down to actually talk about who's going to do the work, how many committees you need, and what the outcomes are, it gets a little bit harder. But those are the things that we're going to spend our time on because they're going to have a big impact on the numbers I presented to you earlier. And with that, I'll take questions.
Could you go back to the slide on research expenditures versus great. Just for board members who are looking at the difference between these two, that's not an apples to apples comparison. If you could just quickly provide a little bit of context around research and then the expenditures on the bottom side.
So, I mean, the dollars that you spend are not those sponsored dollars. Yeah, that's right. That's part of the problem with trying to set up the matrix around the proposals is the proposals that you're comparing to the funded section aren't the same in any given year. You've got to track it over the years that they come in. The research expenditures, though, are the amount that you're paying for the staff that do research, which are also the same people that are going to complete these proposals. And so you have to bring in extra staff in order to create more proposals that you can get funded. And so the lead up is a big expense in staff time because it's not technology that's going to get us extra money. It's people who are the experts in their field that can tell other people, let me have that money and the outcome you want is going to happen.
Thank you.
Yeah. Sorry.
Do you have data further back?
Yes.
And so do you, when you think about the change with the board and your knowledge, is it important to show from 2010 forward? You know, we were talking earlier about people tend to look at year gaps. I tend to look at 10-year gaps,
So normally I take a longer view of things too. I can argue the short-term points. I don't think so. So part of what I look for is intervention and result. So intervention, result. For the 10 years prior, there are interventions I'm sure that we could all point to, and they probably led to a steady decline. But none of them has been as dramatic as the interventions we put in 2016. The strategic planning process that was done for research leading up to it was a big discussion point. And so what I look at is I had a lot of discussions with the Research Council about where the numbers were the prior 10 years and what was important about that. And I was pretty satisfied that if we just started from the baseline forward, we were in good company. The other thing that we did is we took a look at institutions the prior 10 years in her data for anybody that had gotten from roughly the $12 million that we were at to the $60 million in research that we wanted to get to in the strategic planning process, and we found one institution that had. And so what we did was sort of that same prior 10 years, is it possible? Can we find an institution like us? And we did, it was Marshall. And you'll see a lot in our KPI comparisons when we compare to peers. We have a lot of the same issues that Marshall does, but they were able to do it. And so that's what we look for more than we did some sort of a carryover comparison. Does that make sense? I'm sorry.
It does.
Thank you. At this point, I'd like to ask Drs. Joe Sherlin and Ronnie Gross to come forward and present an update on our federally funded college access and success TRIO programs.
Thank you. It's a privilege to be here to introduce Dr. Gross and Noah Lyons, who will be speaking today. Every Monday, Dr. Nolan pushes us in many directions in our leadership team. And one direction that we have been pushing really hard on this year is to tell our story. He reminds us that every day that we're a premier institution with premier programs, and we need to get about telling that story internally and externally. And one of the great stories we have to tell is the story of our TRIO programs and the story of its director. He was a first-generation student from this region, and he got connected to a TRIO program, and it changed his life. And then he went about spending his life leading that program on our campus and changing the lives of thousands of students. Behind all the data, there's personal work, there's personal touch. It's the kind of work that the Ayers Foundation is engaged in. That's the kind of work that matters. So he's here to tell TRIO's story today. It's a privilege to introduce him.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, Dr. Nolan, and Board of Trustees, I want to thank you for the opportunity to present on TRIO programs today. You may ask, what are TRIO programs? So what was I saying? Oh, my voice, sorry about my voice. Last night when we lost our 5-point lead and we were heading down for the basketball game, I was screaming and hollering. So that's where that's from. TRIO programs are federally funded programs where 2/3 of the students that are in our program must meet low income, first generation criteria. Low income is for our students, for a family of 4, for example, their taxable income is less than $38,000, which is similar to Pell eligibility, or for high school, it's near our free and reduced lunch. Free and reduced is 130 to 185%. TRIO programs is 150% of poverty. So those students, basically, they're on financial aid. And first generation is defined for the Department of Education that their parents haven't graduated with a baccalaureate degree. And TRIO programs are designed to work with middle school students all the way through the academic pipeline to college students, adults, and veterans. ETSU hosts 9 TRIO programs. We're one of 17 institutions that have 9 or more TRIO programs, and the one that I'm proud of is ETSU is one of 5 universities to have all of the TRIO programs. And that helps whenever you have a veterans administration across the railroad tracks. You have a research institution with faculty members that are willing to host our students for the McNair program and the Veterans Upper Bound program that I'll talk about later. And of course, tremendous support from the administration, staff, That's why we have all the TRIO programs on campus. One of the first programs I want to talk about is Upward Bound. And Upward Bound works with high school students, and the goal is to get those students motivated, encouraged, and prepared to go to college. We have 3 grants here on campus. We started the Upward Bound program in 1983. We started Elizabethton High School, of all the schools in the area, and have expanded that to serve 208 students at 14 high schools. With this program, we do some online tutoring, individual tutoring. During the academic year, we do weekly school visits with our students to help develop rapport. We have Monday night sessions where the students receive grade-specific information as far as seminars and workshops. In the summer program, this is the coolest part of the program. The students come and live on campus. They pretend like they're college students. They have their classrooms in ETSU classrooms, labs, so they're excited about that. 2 cool parts of the program. For our rising seniors, we place them with a mentor in the community in their career. And the career has to have a requirement of a college degree. So the students are out there working with professionals, and they get some mentoring from a lot of folks in the surrounding community. Another component of our program is the Bridge program. Our seniors that have just graduated high school, we enroll them in 2 ETSU classes, provide them support, supplemental instruction, and to get them started on that path to bridge from high school, hopefully to come here to ETSU. We take the students on trips, to expose them to different universities, different cultural activities. We do some academic ACT preparation. Our students greatly need support in those areas. And one of our required services that for all the TRIO programs, not just Upward Bound, but to spend time with economic and financial literacy for those students to, understand credit card debt, how to set up a checking account, those type things, financial aid, student loans. The math science program, we just got that here back, I think when Dr. Nolan first started, we got our math science program. And it's just like Upward Bound, but there's a special component where we want to work with students that have the capacity to work in math science programs but have the interest in those programs. Some of the proof of some of the work that we do, probably the one I'm most proud of is 76% of the students enroll in post-secondary. And to compare, I've got that right here. The lowest economic income quartile, so students that are the lowest income bracket, the post-secondary enrollment rate for this area is 48%. So 48% of our low-income students, first-generation students, are going to college, and we're able to help 76% of our students go on to college. So we're helping bridge that gap. And the Student Support Services, that's the one that works with the college students here on campus. We provide tutoring, peer tutoring. The students have the same tutor the entire year. We do some academic career coaching with the students. Once again, financial literacy, personal and career counseling. But probably the difference maker is, and this is something that Dr. Sherlin, every time we have a meeting, we talk about, how can we improve? What are we looking at? And it's developing the rapport with the student and spending time, not just a little bit beyond needs assessment, talking about their personal situation and helping them. So having that base is really a good baseline where we start our services with our students. This is something that we're really proud of. Our retention rates for our students for this past year, from one fall to the next fall, is 88%. We're proud of that. And academic good standing, 95%. And our 6-year graduation rate was 60% last year. The Veterans Upward Bound program, it's similar to the high school Upward Bound program, except we work with veterans. And more, we used to do a lot of GED and very few college refresher courses, but now since the the dynamics have changed. We do quite a bit of college prep for the veterans that are coming back and really getting them on track. The students that complete the Veterans Upward Bound program, 83% of them enrolled in the post-secondary program, and 58% of them have graduated from a post-secondary program. The Talent Search program is an information program. It's for middle school and high school students, and it's age appropriate. You can see there some of the middle school activities, goal setting, career awareness, some of those activities for those 6th, 7th, and 8th graders. And then for the high school students, we ramp it up and get them ready to do their 4-year plan and enroll in college. Our high school graduation rate for our Talent Search students, we graduated all of our seniors last year, and 47.6% of our students graduated. That program, once we get them in there, we have some contact with them over the years, and provide them support, but a lot of them, they're all over the place. Oh, how did I do that? Okay. Our Educational Opportunity Center works with adults, and we serve over 1,000 adults here in the 7 counties around East Tennessee State, and we provide them with information of how to apply for college. We do a lot of financial aid work with the assistance with those students. And here's some of our rates. 85% complete the FAFSA. Adults have complex lives. We may have 1, maybe 2 sessions with the students. So, and we meet them at Burger King. We meet them at libraries, all different places. I think if you see in your literature all the different community agencies that really help us with this program. And last but not least is the McNair program. And this is the program that helps our ETSU students. We help them prepare for graduate school with the hopes that they'll go on and be in a PhD program. And 85% of our students graduate with a baccalaureate degree. And since 2017, we've had 4 PhDs. Here's the financial impact, potentially from the budgets that we submit, indirect cost recovery. This is a fee, if you will, to help support the university to host the programs on campus. We provide within our budgets faculty mentor supplies to help the research that the students are doing with the faculty members. And through the Upward Bound Bridge program and the McNair program, the tuition, admission fees, the housing, for the summer residential program, the meals for the summer residential program is a little over $500,000. And something that's pretty cool, the part-time staff that we hire, a majority of those are students. We have 60 peer tutors in our student support services that we have on payroll. And I know with the Upward Bound program in the summer, we hire some of those polo leaders types that work with our students and that are mentors. So we have about 25 of those, plus we get some high school teachers to teach our preview curriculum for our students. So annually, it's not quite $1 million that we potentially can impact the university. And since I've been here, and with help of a lot of other people, TRIO programs have been able to serve over 42,000 students and bring in over $46 million in Department of Education funding. And with that, Mr. Chairman, if I may have Mr. Lyons come forward and give his TRIO testimony.
Thank you, Dr. Gross and Dr. Sherlin. And good afternoon, Chairman Niswonger, Dr. Nolan, and members of the Board of Trustees. As Dr. Gross said, my name is Noah Lyons, and I am a first-generation college student. I'm a senior chemistry major here. I am a peer mentor and tutor with Student Support Services, and I'm also a Ronald McNair Scholar, so kind of run the gamut of TRIO here. But my journey through higher education has had more detours and potholes than Interstate 26. It hasn't been a smooth journey, but I'd like to give you a little history about, where I've come from, just a brief overview of my journey. So I went to Happy Valley High School, and when I was in high school, I was a successful student who glided by with minimal studying. I was fairly high achieving, and I didn't really require that much effort to succeed. And I've always loved education and the pursuit of knowledge, and I've always dreamed of going to college. So when I was 15, my father unexpectedly passed away, and that dream of college was becoming more murky. It was clouded. I didn't know, if I needed to stay home, help with family out, or anything like that. But I knew that I needed to be a role model for my sister and my family, and I knew I needed to be the first in my family to get something greater than a high school diploma. So when I got my ETSU acceptance letter, I knew my life was going to change forever. I knew I was on the right path to do something great. So fast forward to my freshman year, and I was sitting in Dr. Cerrone Foster's Biology 1 class, and I felt lost. I felt, imposter syndrome. I felt like I didn't belong. And at that point, I was directed to the 3rd floor of the Culp Center, to the TRIO Student Support Services office, and I met faculty and staff and students who took an individualized approach to me. They made me feel like I mattered. They made me feel I was meant to be here. It's not a sham. And I count this to changing my educational trajectory. I know that through TRIO programs, this is the reason I've been able to be so successful throughout my college career. So 1 year ago, I decided it was time to give back to these great programs and become a peer mentor and tutor with Student Support Services. And I've loved every minute I've spent there. I love being able to give students both academic and personal counseling, whether it's general physics, biology, or whether it's how do I register for classes, or how do I tell my boss at work I need a little less hours, that way I can focus on school. And lastly, this past summer, I participated in the Ronald McNair Scholars Internship. Now, while it was probably the most grueling and intense 8 weeks of my college career, it was life-changing. It really was. I met so many great staff and the rest of my cohort, and I developed those lifelong connections, and I developed monumental research skills that are benefiting me now. And I gained a grit that I know will serve me well as I plan to pursue a PhD in the coming year. So without TRIO programs, I can't help but think where I might have ended up. And I attribute my success and thousands of other students' success on ETSU's campus to these programs. I'm truly thankful to my family for supporting me through my journey. And I've even convinced my sister Autumn to join the Upward Bound program, and she has not since regretted it. So I just want to say thank you to all the TRIO faculty and staff who have made my college career so successful and enjoyed. I want to thank ETSU for continuing the support of these TRIO programs. And lastly, I'd like to thank all of you for listening to my story. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if there's any
They all
questions.
like him?
Yes, sir.
Very, very inspiring. Thank you.
Any questions? Okay,
Good.
thank you.
Good. Okay, now we've got the long-awaited President's Report.
You have to follow
Yeah, Dr. Nolan.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, good afternoon. One of the things that I hope you can see thematically that we've attempted to do at this board meeting and will attempt to do at board meetings as we embark upon the new decade is to give you examples of things in which we're meeting our mission, but then also, to be honest with you, in areas in which we're not meeting our objectives. You saw as we walked through our enrollment presentation and some of the other elements in the KPIs, we've got a lot of work to do. But when you pull that work to the side and you look at the work that individuals are doing, I hope that you can see we're one ETSU. We're one ETSU focused on our mission, we're one ETSU focused on our values, and we're one ETSU in which one person can have a transformative impact. You just heard one person, Dr. Ronnie Gross, give a presentation on TRIO. One person who, working with a collection of others with one mission and one vision over a 30-year time period, have touched 42,000 lives at almost $60 million. That's one person. And sometimes we can lose sense in a big institution and in a big place that, well, what's my role in the university? And what I want to try to push is that all of us working together as individuals with a shared mission, a shared vision, and shared values can allow us to achieve our mission. So why this slide with billboards on it? The slide with billboards on it tells a story because you have pushed us to focus on our outreach. You've pushed us to focus on branding. Today in one of the committees, you pushed us to get a sense of what we're doing with marketing. So to the left, you see orientation. Brooks is packed. The entire side of the building is full. On the floor is Dr. Joe Sherlin walking students through an overview of the benefits of enrolling in post-secondary education. The person who took it's me because I'd finished my speech and came up to top to get a sense of what the room looked like. To the right are the new billboards that rolled out this week all across the region. We're the region's university. Come home to East Tennessee. You will see an enhanced marketing presence from this institution at a university level and at a college level throughout 2020. Staff had the University of East Tennessee on one of the billboards. I thought, what about the University for East Tennessee? And we just decided to call it in the middle and say, just come on home to East Tennessee. So I'm showing this to you as a sense of some of the things that we are doing and some of the things that you're going to see. But it all links back to people aligned to mission, people with values, and how those values impact the region. So overview, I'm going to talk on a couple things. I'm going to talk a little bit about strategic plan. I'm going to talk about our legislative agenda. I'm going to give you a sense of what we're engaged in now and what we're going to be engaged in next year. I can't give a presentation without this slide, so I've checked the box, but this isn't a checking of the box. President Gilbreth established the mission for the university, and all of us have a responsibility to live this mission, which is to improve the quality of life for the people of the region. The faces have changed, the people have changed. We now have digital rather than black and white photos, but the mission remains constant. This is the strategic framework that the board approved. I put this up to remind you and to remind us of these are the pillars of the strategic plan that the board has approved for the university. And here are our goals. Dr. Hoff touched upon progress that we're making towards those goals. Some areas, we're going to hit them. 60% graduation rate, we're at 50 now. Others, the landscape has changed. When we embarked upon setting these objectives, the temperament around international students is very different than it is presently. And if that temperament remains consistent, we probably need to adjust these goals mid-cycle. But nonetheless, these are the goals that you set as a board for us as a university, and it's what we're working towards. So I want to talk a little bit about budget and finance. You're aware that within the state of Tennessee, a decade ago, we moved away from a focus on an enrollment-driven formula, and we've now focused on an outcomes-driven formula. I think one of the things that's interesting for universities such as ourselves is the state's real focus has been on community colleges. Promise, Reconnect, all of those elements are focused on the community colleges, state-supported bridge programs. The goal is for students to start their experience somewhere other than us. So we're working against headwinds that altogether may not be aligned with our institutional objectives. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about capital, but the capital process has also changed. So as we are moving through some things in terms of the budget landscape, we are very, very fortunate in that we have a state that's investing in higher education, but we have to be cognizant of the fact that those investments are oriented with the policy landscape, and that policy landscape puts its focus in other institutional sectors. Trustee DiCarlo asked about a long-term view. I kind of share your long-term perspective, so I'm going to have some trend slides here. It's one of the areas where Dr. Hoff and I can agree to disagree, at least for today. I can't disagree with him too much because I need him to help me with the data. I don't know if you caught his joke that he's not a numbers guy. I thought that was kind of cute. But here's what's happening with funding, and this is just beyond description. Few states in the nation can put a slide up like this to show that in a decade period, that investment of new resources to support higher education. At East Tennessee State University, moving from $45 million to $70 million. That's an investment in infrastructure, it's an investment in people, it's an investment in salary. Here's the way those investments used to be made. Here's the way those investments are done now, all on outcomes. And here's the report card. As Dr. Hoff outlined, we were the best performing institution in the state of Tennessee along these criteria. As you look at new revenue that THEC has requested of the governor going into the 20 legislative session, they've requested $35 million in new outcomes. Of that, 4.2% increase or $2.9 million for ETSU, the top performing institution. And here's where that performance lies. That performance lies in bachelor's degree production, master's production, and graduation rate. This is the slide that THEC staff put up in front of their board last Thursday. And I shared this with you because it's a sense of how the state is outlining the work that's occurring here at our university. The growth in degrees, the growth in graduation rate all aligns with Drive to 55. So now let's look at that in comparison to the other institutions. I know it's a little tight, but if you lean in, you can see the numbers. I draw your attention to the fact that this is a scorecard that changes year after year. State appropriations for MTSU from an outcomes perspective declined this year. If we're unable to grow our freshman enrollment next fall, in 3 years, you'll see our number decline because there's not the volume moving through the pipeline. So we're realizing the benefits now of the growth that we had 4 years ago when we had the large freshman class. So these numbers swing, but I'm just wanting you to see this is what is being recommended by THEC for the current upcoming legislative session, and here's how all that looks. Largest percentage increase is us. You see the $2.9 million, but the takeaway is at the end, that's $35 million in new outcome funding for the state system as a whole. As you are talking to legislators, as you're with Governor Lee, as you're with decision makers, I would strongly encourage you to thank them and support the outcomes investment. It's our number one priority is that the outcome investments are supported in the legislative process, and this is one where we're in congruence with THEC. Second portion of the THEC recommendation, you see at the bottom support for the College of Medicine and Family Medicine. That's not a typo. It's an 8% increase in state support for the Quillen College of Medicine. For the past couple of years, the state has not provided the salary enhancements for Quillen, so this is kind of a makeup, but that would be an 8% increase, taking our funding for Quillen from the state to almost $38 million. The first two bullets are specialized appropriation requests that we brought through the process that are THEC's number one priority. This was in front of the General Assembly last year as well as in front of Governor Lee. It was not funded, so THEC has brought it back. And once again, as you talk to members of the General Assembly, this is critical for the institution, for the College of Medicine, but more importantly, it's critical for the region. For those of you who have young children or young grandchildren, if they are ever in a position in which they have required emergency surgery, you know we have one pediatric trauma surgeon for the entire region, one. If she's not on call, you're getting shipped somewhere else. So what this would allow us to do is to bring 3 trauma surgeons into the rotation, and it would be a 3-folded element to fund, part of us, part of Ballard, part of the state. On the second portion of this, it allows us then to build out some of the subspecialists in neurology, endocrinology, pulmonology. This would allow us to build out aspects that serve the Niswonger Children's Hospital and others across the Ballard system. Once again, a partnership with the state, with the university, and with Ballard. But if we're able to fund these, this would put us in a position where we could provide a much more robust set of pediatric services to the citizens of our region than we are able to do now. This was THEC's top priority, and once again, as you talk to folks in Nashville, I would encourage you to stress the importance of this. So let's talk a little bit about capital. I referenced in a comment that the process through which capital is evaluated has changed. When I worked in Nashville, we had 2 governing bodies, TBR and UT. They developed their list, projects went on the list, and they marched up the process. The Fine and Performing Arts Center went on the list in 1986. It's getting ready to come out of the ground. So it was a slug. One of the things that the state did is to move to a process that was much more competitively scored, that was much more flexible and allowed capital to meet emerging needs across the state rather than just getting in line and waiting your turn, all of which we're extremely supportive of. So last year, here was the capital list. We were number 5 on the list for the humanities building. The state funded the top 3 projects. So in the old days, we would have moved up to number 2. However, this year we dropped to number 8. I cannot stand before you and explain why. I've yet to receive the scoring sheets. I have no information on why we've dropped, but we dropped. I'm hopeful that THEC will provide some reflection of the fact that there's planning that goes into this process. Many of you remember Dr. Fred Alsop. Dr. Alsop was trustee. Dr. Alsop has a facility in the building that would be destroyed and taken to the ground so that we can build the humanities building. As you know, he spent a significant amount of time looking to where to relocate the train museum. We're fundraising for the humanities building. I could not look you as a trustee in the eye and say, could you please help contribute to this? And you write a check for, let's have a little bit of fun, you make the whole match. Someone writes a check for $9.5 million and you made Pam's day. And then I come before you next year and the project's not on the list at all. And you say, I want my money back. This is a process that needs some work. And I'm hopeful that as you talk to colleagues in Nashville, you can stress the importance of both flexibility as well as predictability. I don't have the magic answer here, but I also know I cannot stand before my bosses and explain to them why our project dropped from 5 to 8. Here's our deferred maintenance projects, and here's our deferred maintenance projects on the out years. Let me pause here before going on to tuition and mandatory fees. And any questions at all about capital, about funding, about what THEC has recommended? We have, and they've told us they would get us the scoring. We've yet to receive it. But it's competitive. Every year it's rescored, and I understand that. But I think we need to have some conversations that could meld. So I'm a simple person. As staff hears me say all the time, I'm overly naive, I'm optimistic, so I'm going to put all that on the front end. But if you had 10 projects and you fund 3, then the other 7 should move up, and you'd backfill with 3 new ones on the back end.
If you're consistent in what you're doing.
If you're consistent in what you're doing. But
Those 3 are the ones that should be scored, not the other 10, because they're already on the list. That's what you would think. That's what.
I think that's a conversation worth having.
So the one that moved to number 1, was it on the list the previous year?
It was, yes, sir. It was the project that was right in front of us.
And number 2?
The top 3 projects were, number 2 is TCAT Chattanooga. TCAT Chattanooga was not on the list. The Austin Peay project jumped us. The Nashville project was not on the list. The Memphis project jumped us. The Middle project was not on the list.
Do they ask you to come down and represent the project when they're doing their scoring? How do they do that, please?
We submit, it's essentially turned into a grant application. So we submit our project, which is scored and reviewed like a grant application. We have the opportunity to present that, but the scoring occurs through an independent scoring panel.
So turning around your example, if a donor said, I'll give you $10 million, promise to start next year.
We're not able to start unless we're authorized by the state to begin to expend those resources.
No, but if you went to the state and said, I have one gift for 1 year, I gotta have approval.
That would have to influence their scoring, would it not?
That would be a fun conversation to have.
Yeah, imagine.
Was that an offer?
It's a request.
Any other questions? Then let me jump ahead and talk a little bit about tuition, because this is another area in which I think you have the ability, and we all have the ability to kind of inform a process. And Governor Ramsey probably knows a little bit more about this than all of us combined. But a change in the policy dynamic post-focus is that THEC sets binding tuition ranges for the institutions. This is the analysis that SARE staff provided to the board last Thursday. So these are the ranges that THEC has brought forward, a 2% maximum cap on tuition and fees. So you see at East Tennessee State University, if we were to increase fees to 2%, that would be an increase of $190. Now the math that's hidden in this, and this is where Governor Ramsey already knows where I'm going, is the governor is most likely going to recommend a 2% salary enhancement. That 2% salary enhancement is only partially funded. The state pays for half, we pay for the other half. In order for us to cover our portion of the mandatory salary enhancement, it would take a 1.2% fee increase, which then only leaves this board 0.8% to cover inflationary costs or anything that the students would like to see brought forward. I anticipate the students are going to bring forward a recommendation this year for enhanced counseling, enhanced crisis support, enhanced support for suicide prevention, enhanced support for a lot of the mental health needs that face students across our campus and across the country. So that's then going to start tapping into that little bit of fee revenue that's left. So where I think we may be able to have a conversation, and we've tried this for decades, is that if the state provides a salary enhancement, they fully fund the salary enhancement, thereby taking off the 1.2% fee increase is required to cover our portion of the salary increase. Rule of thumb, it's about half. It's about, yeah, for us, it's about half. So our budget landscape, and there's a lot here, and I don't want to rush through some of this, but I'm not going to touch on every bullet. You know we've moved to a decentralized budgeting process. For the campus, we'll send out details, calendars, and instructions very quickly. But as we look back at what happened last year, we put $1.8 million in carry forward funds that were distributed to the colleges. We also put $1 million in reserves. We provided salary enhancements for the 7th time in 8 years, and we increased the starting salary for our hourly employees, moving from below $9 an hour to $9.20 an hour. As Dr. Hoff noted, we're going to look at pricing. Dr. McGee, in her comments to the academic committee this morning, talked about some of the pricing challenges we face, and Trustee Foley provided the example for her program. I think we've got to look at pricing as a whole. So what we will bring to you in the spring is recommendations around tuitions, fees, and scholarships for the fall of 2021. It's too late for us to change scholarships now for this coming fall because our folks are already in the field talking about things from an admissions perspective. But you will see us bring recommendations around a repackaging of aid and to present all that to you so that our admissions folks will have that in the field as they're growing the class for 2021. But I would like to update the board on a decision that I hope you will support me on, and that would be to make an adjustment in the process that would allow us to serve students who are graduating from high school early. We learned of the numbers of this here within the past couple of weeks as we've been in high schools. So this week I was at Powell, weeks kind of run together. This week I was in Knoxville at Powell High School. And as we were going through the school, surprising students with scholarships, their counselor said, well, I sure wish you could do something for students who are graduating early. And I go, well, how many students are graduating early? And they said more than 100. A third of the senior class at Powell is graduating early. A third of the senior class at Bearden is graduating early. And in many counties across the state, they are pushing students to graduate in December so that they can get to work, so that they can start at a community college through Promise, or so that they can go into the armed services. If a student graduated from Powell, went to Pellissippi in the spring, decided that they really wanted to be a physician and come to ETSU and enrolled in the fall, we would not be in a position to provide them with an academic performance scholarship because they would be a transfer student. So if we're trying to hit our enrollment objectives, then this is an area where we've got to make an internal adjustment. So what I would like to do, if the board is comfortable, is to adjust our policy, not to change the dollar amounts, but just to say to those early high school graduates, if you've got a 30 ACT, we sure would love to have you at East Tennessee State University, and we're going to offer you an APS just as if you'd graduated in the spring. So trying to make some adjustments on the fly to be nimble, even though we're not in a position to totally repackage aid.
You need a motion.
Well, if you would like to make one, that'd be great. I was just going to go ahead and do it, but if you want to give me cover, that'd be appreciated.
We're all for it. I like your forward momentum.
Okay.
Whatever it takes.
Don't wait on us.
All right, then Dr. Sherlin, get your stuff out there. Let's switch a little bit. I've not shared this information with you, and I'm just giving this as context. Earlier this summer, I had the chance to speak at a national conference in Boston and talked a lot about some of the demographic changes that are facing the country. And as you look forward to the end of the next decade, so it's 2030, what we're going to see is a shift in students who are demanding access to post-secondary education. You see all across the country, white, non-Hispanic numbers are dropping, and there will be fewer students of that demographic seeking access to post-secondary education than there is now. The growth will be in Hispanic and Latina students and in Asian Pacific Islanders. The challenge is here. If you go back to 2008 and look at birth rates and map that forward, this is work by Dr. Nathan Graw, a demographer who has forecasted college enrollment levels. You see in the middle of the next decade a dramatic drop. So why are we restructuring financial aid and scholarships? Why are we restructuring enrollment? Why are we restructuring advising? Because we know this is on the horizon, and this is not just us, it's for every institution across the country. Now, if I were to show you the regional maps, we look a little bit better in Tennessee than if you're in the Northeast. But for those of you who have colleagues in places such as West Virginia, where they are 7 years ahead of us on the demographic decline, they're looking at college closures, college consolidations, and college mergers. So this is what's on our landscape. You all have asked me what keeps me up at night. I've told you my answer is enrollment, enrollment, enrollment. This is one of the reasons why enrollment is so front and center in so many of the things we discuss. So where's our enrollment now? Well, if you look back over a decade, you can see that we at East Tennessee State University are up a little bit, but for all intents and purposes, we're flat. And if you look at the second bullet, this for me is really interesting. And I may be the only person who finds this interesting, but I find it interesting. With all of the investments that have been made in Promise and Reconnect and everything else, enrollment's flat. The only place where enrollment's up is in the UT system. And when UT decides to grow, there's a giant sucking sound that occurs all across the state because they're taking students who are in the queue to go everywhere else. So to say enrollment is competitive is an understatement. We've got to keep these numbers in front of us and recognize that sometimes as much as things change, they stay the same. However, look at some of the changes at institutions like Middle. They're down 3,000 students since 2013. That's $27 million budget reduction. So as you start moving these numbers forward, you can really get a sense of where things lie. And this just gives you a sense of how things have changed over time and where we stand. Here's our enrollment. You've seen the numbers. We're up in Clemmer. We're up in nursing. We're up in nursing because of the great work of Dr. Nearing and her team. We're up in public health. You've seen these numbers. I put them in front of you again because it's not every day you get to say it's the highest graduation rate in the history of the university. And there it is in a different metric. But that jump from 41% to 50% was because of intentional interventions in advising, the hiring of new advising. But we've got to move from 50 to 60. And to move from 50 to 60, it's going to take some adjustments in the way in which we've structured advising. And I'm going to talk about that in a few seconds. So let me pause for any questions there before moving into strategic initiatives. So here are our proposed legislative initiatives for 2020. These are the items that we would feel should be the institution's priorities going into the session. Support for the outcomes formula, recognition of the research role that we play, i.e. support for those 2 pediatric lines that are in the THEC budget. We'd like to get some predictability around capital process. Now, if the governor funded all 8 projects, then that's a wonderful situation to find ourselves in. But if he doesn't, where are we going to be next year? So some conversations around predictability, continued support for deferred maintenance, the continuation and expansion of the THEC Campus Safety Initiative. I cannot applaud THEC enough, and Lauren Collier's here. Lauren, thank you for your presence. Thank you for the guidance that you provide to us, and thank you for pushing on this. Each year for the past 3 years, THEC has put $200,000 for all of the institutions, so that's $200,000 for us, Middle, et cetera, on campus safety. As a result of those investments, every classroom on this campus has an interior locking door. We couldn't have said that before. And what we would like to use these funds for moving forward is to enhance our camera technology, not only to enhance technology, but to increase the numbers of cameras across campus. We can't be everywhere at once, but our ability to track things in real time is critical. And these funds, if provided by the General Assembly, would allow us to enhance technology across campus. And then continued conversations about Gatton and the support for Gatton from a tuition equalization perspective. On the policy lens, I've given you some policy things to consider. Some consideration around elements of capital, some considerations around salary. But I also think it might be informative to have some considerations around the process through which new programs are reviewed. At the last THEC meeting, Mike Krause did mention that for those programs that have emergent business and industry needs, they, THEC, were open to a new program approval process. But for those of you who know members of the commission, would just encourage you to continue to stress to them the importance of that flexibility. THEC no longer approves associate's degree programs. All of that was pushed down to the Board of Regents. So we may want to look at program approval moving forward as a way for us to meet the business and industry needs here in Northeast Tennessee, but for Memphis to meet business and industry needs in Memphis and all across the state's 95 counties. So here are our initiatives. These are the initiatives that we put in front of you last year that we said we would focus on this year. I'm bringing it to a reminder, but there's some things here that are new. Talked about enrollment, but I want to put a little bit of an accent on the internal marketing. We do a terrible job of telling our story, and we do a terrible job of knowing our story. When I stand and say we have top 25 ranked school of physical therapy, top 10 college of medicine in the country for rural and family practice, largest college of nursing in the state, and I rattle all things off, our own family members say, well, I didn't know any of that. So what you're going to see us do when we return in the new year is we're going to have an internal marketing campaign. For those of you who've been in Quillen, you see the elevator wraps that tell the Quillen story in Stanton Gerber. We're going to do the same thing across campus so that all members of the ETSU community can begin to know our mission, vision, values, and tell the stories of excellence that exist at this university. We've got to be able to tell our own story before we expect others to buy our story. But we're also going to market externally. So you saw the billboards. You will see college-level marketing campaigns moving forward in the spring semester. We've got to do more to be aggressive in marketing. Trustee Latimer asked a question on our marketing budget. Overall, institutionally, it's less than $100,000. So we've got to look to the colleges to contribute. Scott, that's correct. So we've got to invest more if we're going to expand in the marketplace. So you'll see us be more aggressive in this area. I mentioned the review of tuition pricing and our discount rate. We've got to both grow enrollment and maximize revenues. If we grow enrollment, but you discount everything on the scholarship side and your revenue profile diminishes, then you've really not accomplished anything. So how can we repackage scholarships? We're going to continue to move on the budget side. We're going to continue to focus on KPIs, but you saw KPIs today at a campus level. Through academic performance solutions, we're going to give KPIs at a college level that allow colleges the same visibility that you saw today. We're restructuring some things in student services to create a division of student life, changing scholarships, financial aid, and advising. We have brought in an outside firm, EAB, that has examined our advising structure. And as we move into the new year, advising will move from academic affairs to student affairs to create student life so that we can touch a student from beginning to end in a manner similar to what you saw with TRIO. Touching a student in its 8th grade, moving through Upward Bound, then all the way onto the back end with the McNair Scholars Program. So looking to take the success of programs such as TRIO and really bring them to scale across campus. I mentioned before safety. We're going to roll out the new safety app. We're looking at our gen ed curricula. And then I really would like to try to see us move around this concept of we're one ETSU. We're not individual colleges. We're not individual clubs and organizations. We're one university, a diverse, broad, multifaceted institution who embraces our values, one ETSU. You're familiar with ETSU Health. You know what we're doing on research. On capital, we're going to bring you a recommendation at some point in 2020 around housing. Do we move to a mandatory live-on or not? We're close to having that due diligence work completed. We've wrapped up the housing master plan, and we'll bring that to you for consideration. I want to take a moment to put in a plug. So for board members who are active with community service organizations, please look at what we're doing with ETSU Elevates. It's a chance for us to take that mission into the region. We will put $90,000 worth of grants and resources to local community organizations if they partner with an ETSU organization to accentuate the service mission. We had a significant number of applications from which we picked 5, and we're going to do this in kind of a Shark Tank style on Monday, in which the 5 individuals who were selected will make their pitch. We'll pick 3, and we'll push $15,000 out to service groups on Monday, and then we'll turn around and have another pitch competition in the spring. So broad range of groups from things on, it's a broad range of groups. I'm not going to remember all 5. Dr. Green, I want to give him credit for pushing this. I mentioned to you in the past a grand challenge, and this is that link of a grand challenge. How do we take the service mission of the university and demonstrate to the region what that service mission means? And then you see through all the things on the end, the institution's Title IX plans. We talked about that today, and we'll bring back to the Academic Affairs Committee at the subsequent meeting some of the work around other programs that we examined. So this is my last slide, I promise, and would be happy to take any questions. So as we kind of look at who we are as a university, we're an institution with a mission of stewardship to place. You saw that with TRIO. You saw that with the nursing presentation. You see that in our KPIs. But we've got to find a way as an institution, and we've got to find a way as a region to dream bigger dreams for ourselves and not to set limits on our horizons. We're Division I university. We beat the University of Tennessee twice in baseball in the spring. We're going to compete at the NCAA tournament level across multiple sports. We're a Division I university. We're a Carnegie classified research university. It's time that we meet that Carnegie classification, and it's time that we begin to punch at our weight. If we were a boxer, we're a middleweight punching like a flyweight. And that's the university and it's the region as a whole. And I'm hopeful 10 years from now, if I have the opportunity to stand before this board, I can say we realized our potential. And in sidebar conversation, I talked about the Martin Center, and I'm going to close with two little stories, and then I will be happy to take any questions. First story is on the Martin Center. Valentine's Day 2013, right down the hall, I stood with Jim Martin and we announced the Arts Initiative. He said, "Brian, I've been dreaming about this since the 1980s, and I'm afraid I won't live to see it come to fruition." Unfortunately, Mr. Martin will not be here when we cut the ribbon on the building, but his belief in us will be here. It took 7 years to get the building done. Sometimes change in higher education is difficult, but you've got to have a long-term vision to realize that objective. But that long-term vision takes people. And once again, it's people who make a difference. 2 weeks ago at that open house where the picture was shown, I was walking across campus and I had a family stop me and they went on and on and on about how beautiful the grounds were. And the mother said, "Well, Mr. President, if you take this good of care of the grounds, you're going to take great care of my kid." Our grounds crew not only took care of the grounds to prepare it for that day. When Bands of America were here, our campus was spotless. That same grounds crew 2 days ago made an absolutely beautiful night come to fruition when President Amir Sheikh and I had the honor to turn on the holiday lights. That grounds crew was putting lights all over the trees, lights on the Carillon, lights on Dossett. And if you want to see pride in the eyes of the grounds crew because they know that their work is meaningful. It impacts our mission, and it impacts enrollment. That's a sign that things come together. It's not about cutting the grass and moving the leaves. It's that all of that is critical to the work that we do from an enrollment perspective. That's a group that punches above their weight. How can we, as a rest of a campus, hit that objective? That's our mission of stewardship of place. I apologize for preaching, but I kind of went all day and I didn't get to preach to someone, so at least I had the opportunity to preach to the board. Staff has to listen to me preach all the time. But as we close this decade, one of the things that you will see us do strategically for agendas for this board in the coming year is reflect on what we've done over the past 10 years, but then vision where we want to be in 2030. We've tried to tell you some good stories today, but we know it's not all good stories. We know there's a lot of work to be done. I thank you for the opportunity to be a part of that work, and I'd be honored to address any questions from the board.
Questions?
So I have a question, but it's in the vein of Jim Powell telling me don't try to run the university sitting on the board. So one of the things that I look at in the business world is my corporate structure not hearing my field structure. So when I see all the objectives, the biggest thing I sit there and think about is, what do the students want? Right? What if you are a freshman? They don't want the maintenance crew to fix all the things that are lacking. We do. What do they want, and how do we measure from a freshman to a graduate student that we finished what mattered to them? And I'm sure you have it, but
I'll address a portion of it. I'll tell you how we attempt to gauge it, but I really think it'd be powerful to hear from Trustee Santana since you've got a student on the board. I can tell you a number of years ago, if you asked students what they wanted better dining options. They'll have that when we open the Culp in about 3 months.
But do you list those? Because that is important.
It is, and it's kind of enveloped in the continued progress on capital. I know when we talk to our student leadership, when we talk to President Sheikh and his leadership team, the things that are of critical importance to them, student welfare, So many students struggle with everything from food insecurity to shelter to how to pay the bills to just stress in a way that's hard to describe. So they're very interested in how we can build out our counseling and student support services. If they could do any one thing in terms of capital, they would invest every single dollar we had in fixing up Brown Hall. Brown Hall is the workhorse of the university for science and biology, chemistry, and the labs really, I can't say they don't look any different than when some of you who are on the board took classes in Brown Hall, because they look worse. Our students, for those of you who are familiar with Kingsport, if you go in Dobbins-Bennett High School and see the new science labs in the front addition to Dobbins-Bennett, and then you're a kid with a 32 ACT who came here on an honor scholarship and you're taking chemistry in Brown Hall, it's like you step back to 1952. So our students would like to see investments in Brown Hall to fix up the chemistry labs and the biology labs. Those are the two things when I listen to students, and then safety. But I would defer to Trustee Santana because I haven't been a student in a long time.
Trustee DiCarlo, to answer your question, I'm going to go through my stages and what I have experienced from me and my peers. Freshman and sophomore year, of course, we're looking at infrastructure, we're looking at class quality, but we're also the main thing we're looking for is acceptance. We're looking for an environment that will accept us as we are, an environment where we can see things that we like and relate to people. And I can assure you we can find that at this university. As an international student, I found it immediately. My peers, local students, I found it immediately within the first 2 years. Moving forward, my junior and senior year, not only from my perspective, but with the students I have interacted, they're looking for workforce development. They're looking for faculty relationships that will help them enhance their experience in education. That's here. We have faculty members that will go above and beyond to make sure that the student understands the material. I'm going to tell a quick story here. A couple of weeks ago, one of the students missed a class. He was out of town. The faculty member went above and beyond and had a phone call, a FaceTime conversation with the student for 45 minutes to ensure that he understood the material. That's here. We have an outstanding career services department that takes care of that, help us with that transition to the real world, to find a job, which is why most of us are here. Graduate students, we're looking for research opportunities. We're looking for more career developments. All of that is here. Dr. Nolan, they talked about infrastructure. We're looking for that as well. Sometimes we're kind of disappointed, not gonna lie. But work is being done, and we can see that. From someone that has been here for 5 years, I can say that the university has improved, but there's still a lot of space for improvement. I hope that answered your question.
And do you have the voice that the priority lists, some simple food, some not so simple safety, are we seeing that voice? We see it. It's hard to find the words. Safety's not hard to find. But, I always say to my leadership team, your scorecard is in January. You stand up in front of all the employees, and if you lie to them, they know it. Well, if we lie to you, you know it. And how do we keep school, that's all.
I think the issue here, and it is a big issue I found, we have a student government that it's our voice. As students, it's our voice. The thing here is that normal students, your average Joe, for example, he or she doesn't know that we have a student government that informs about all these initiatives to Dr. Nolan, that writes legislation constantly, and that gets passed and goes through Dr. Nolan's office. Most students are not aware of that. And some of the necessities might not be heard. And that's one of the things we need to work on. Letting students know that their voice will be heard. And then there's a group of students that all they do, the things that don't let them sleep, is that their voices are not being heard. And I think we need to improve in communication there. That's...
Put that on the list.
Definitely.
Thank you.
Okay. Good job. We're at the moment. Any other business to come before the board? Nope. Seeing none, I would like to ask Governor Ramsey for a motion for adjournment. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you all.